First things first, man. Thank you so much for taking the time out to be on Studio One. My name is Jibril Osman. The platform I created is a space where I get to interview international artists, artists across Canada, and local artists in Toronto. It's a space where I get to have like conversations with artists that I really want to get to talk with. So, man, thank you so much for being on it.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
For sure. Just before we begin, can you just briefly introduce yourself, and then we'll just get started.
Jade Eagleson, and I'm a country singer from Ontario, Canada.
Perfect. So I know with your family, it's very musical background. Talk to me about growing up and the music that was surrounding you. I know your mom, a musician, teaches music, and definitely your grandpa. Talk about all of the familyness and all of it.
My grandpa grew up. His dad was a musician, and he played guitar and a lot of the old Irish tunes and stuff like that, and country tunes. And then my grandpa kind of followed suit, and I had a very musical family on my dad's side, where my aunt plays piano and teaches piano. My uncle plays guitar, a bit of fiddle. So everyone's very musically inclined on that side. And then also on my mother's side, she's as you said, a music teacher, and she has her own career as well as a vocalist. So it's definitely on both sides, and I'm really blessed to have that the family there.
And given that, do you think, I guess looking back, the idea of becoming an artist or having a career, do you think that having that musical family really helped you, I guess, with the idea of, if the musical background is there? Talk about that, and as an artist, having that like as a support.
It was very great to start. I mean, obviously, we're a bunch of farmers and stuff, so it's kind of hard to picture as like, well, something I'm equally as good at. This guy's going out and not working a real job or whatever. So it took a minute to make sense, and then when it did, they're super supportive, and they're there from the get-go. And same with my mom. My mom was always a major supporter of everything I did, both my parents. So it was definitely interesting, though, going out and playing music and coming from, a family of hard workers.
For sure. And with the idea of growing up in a farm and the tight-knit community, how was it when you started getting older? And I know you performed at bars. Like, how did it feel, kind of like, I guess, the steps of becoming an artist in terms of performing? How were the early stages of that?
It's a very slow climb. It's I play out of town, and then eventually there's so many local artists in the town that I'm closest to. I'm from a town called Millbrook, Ontario, and then the closest town to that is Peterborough, or Port Hope. It's right in the middle. But basically, there's a lot of artists in Peterborough, and the scene's hard to get into. So it took a minute to kind of get in there. There's a really wonderful man named Matt Diamond that had an open mic there, and that's kind of where I started getting the courage to get up on stage. And then from there, I shifted to Port Hope and played with some incredible talent down there. And eventually, it just kind of kept growing until we had this honky tonk in the middle of nowhere that doubled as a Chinese food restaurant, which was just perfect for all the guys at the end of the night. We ate well, but it was that was where I really grew a fan base and got my start, is right out of that place.
Sure. And in terms of those beginnings, were you writing songs, or is the idea of being a performer the first thing you kind of were dabbling in with, or were you writing songs as well in those times?
I was kind of writing and performing. I was always it's so strange when you're in a community, right? Because when you play your own music, it's stuff they haven't heard, right? So if you're playing to a bar, then you're not going to really appreciate it as much, because it's not going to be like if you play guitars and Cadillacs, or in comparison to something that you just wrote on your guitar a couple of weeks ago, people aren't going to recognize it. So it was always tricky, kind of trying to break the scene there.
Yeah. And of course, moving forward, applying for the Boots and Hearts and winning and things like that. and not in terms of winning, in terms of the idea of applying and putting yourself out there. I know I watched a video of yours where I come from, and you're 7 years old and you're performing. How nervous were you in terms of either applying to Boots and Hearts, or was it more nervous applying and putting yourself out there, or after the fact of actually winning? Like, at what parts, I would say?
I'd say the applying, it was still surreal. It was kind of like, oh, like I'm just kind of going through it. And then when you're actually up on the stage, it's a nightmare for your nerves. It's very scary.
Because for you, after the winning, it was so immediate, and of course everybody sees the success and the immediate nature of it. Then you release a single and it does really well. But for you, talk about, I guess, the build up during that process. I would love to know that.
It was very interesting because, like, you win this thing and then you don't hear anything for I don't know how long, but it was like, all right, well, I won this, and that was kind of like the height of it. Like, now where do I go? I had the label and everything, but everything runs it runs smooth, and there's a reason behind there's a logic, right? But it just took a bit of time to get all the ducks in a row, right? So it made sense as to why I took the time, just because, like, you write songs and there's instead of just jumping on the first one you release or wanted to do, it makes sense to kind of have more of a catalog. And I never understood the process because, like, I'm signed to a label. I got this going for me. I'm like,
yeah.
What's going on? Like, why is it taking so long? So when we finally got the song out and I understood. Because then you release a song and then it gets even worse because you're on the charts for like 6 months sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's like, when's this thing gonna climb? When's it gonna do something? And you're just sitting back and watching, and then finally, push week comes and everyone's ducks are in a row and they go for it, and it's such a cool process. It's a long patience is virtue, I guess, in this kind of stuff, and every season is going to be different, but I've learned a lot just to kind of sit back and let everyone do their job, and then I just do my job.
Yeah. And with artists, especially in the beginning, with the idea of a debut and the way you're introducing yourself, in terms of the debut single, doing amazingly well, and now you have, the debut album, how do you view the idea of a debut? Do you feel like this album is your introduction in the way that artists grow in their career, or with this record, how is it from your perspective?
I mean, this one is when we release an album for the first time, it's always going to be different from what artists turn out to be in their future. And if you listen to anyone's first cuts, it's always going to be different, like from Van Halen to Led Zeppelin, that kind of stuff is always going to be different as a result. And I hope to grow. I'm not sure that the music style or the genre will never change, and the style we are going for will never change. I think hopefully will evolve, if anything.
Yeah. And I know a large part of the interviews that I've read about you and videos and things, the way you view your music is traditional country and growing up on a farm and all of those things. As a country artist, how do you view the genre and the way you make your music?
I kind of try to stand out from the regular pop country, which is tricky because at the same time you have to kind of conform to what is on radio, and you can't be like if you go too traditional, then you're going to be labeled as Americana, right? And I still want to sit in that country genre, so it's interesting trying to get songs that are kind of sliced right down the middle, but it's an exciting process. It's really cool. So it's cool to watch it all get produced too, because you have the best of both worlds. You have the best of what's modern and what's old.
Yeah, for sure. And with you as well, the importance for you is growing up on a farm and staying to your roots, and that being a major part of the way you are as an artist. Does that stem from the beginnings of having the family music and wanting to stay with the roots? Because I know in some of your interviews, I think you said you moved into town as you got older. I think you lived in Petersburg, but you really went back to being on a farm. Talk about how important that is for you.
I feel like my roots were always like in the farm. It's strange to imagine like one place is kind of got that hold on you, but it's like there's a different peace of mind that you get just kind of being able to go out and see the nature and put the work in, get your hands dirty. It's such a rewarding feeling. So when I was there, I just felt more inspired. I felt more full, like the person that I am.
Yeah, and with shows that you were able to do, I guess before COVID, like in terms of when your career and things like that, talk about some highlights of shows that you've done, and how have you grown, I guess, as a performer, and just highlight some.
It's a very like slow climb. I used to be like one of those guys that would sit and just strum and not want to move anywhere, and I had this weird habit of stomping at a time too. That was bad. So there's a lot of adjustments that take place, and some of them were nervous habits. But the more you get used to playing out and doing all that, and the better you get as an artist. And it's a huge learning curve, and it takes some time. But I think my favorite two shows that I played at the CCMAs 1 year and did a quick stripped down version of Got Your Name on It, I believe. And before that, I played at the Calgary Stampede, which was maybe the biggest show I played. And it was incredible because when you hear people singing back to you, it's so powerful.
Yeah, for sure. Have your family members seen you live? I'm sure you've had that experience. How has that been, especially your grandpa? Talk about that and them seeing you grow as an artist.
Yeah, my grandpa hasn't been out to some of the newer shows just because his hearing is a little off, so he doesn't bother. He doesn't like loud music. He'd rather just do acoustic guitars. But my mom's been out and my dad's been out. This would have been their first CCMAs being in Ontario, but unfortunately, it's all live and stuff now. But they've come out to tons of shows, especially starting out, and I'm super blessed to have them.
And as an artist too, with quarantine and COVID things like that, first of all, how have you been with all of that going on and your family and things like that? Congratulations, by the way, being a dad and things like that. So that's amazing. How has that been as a human first, as foremost, but also as an artist? How have you been, coping and writing songs or things like that?
Yeah, I've been writing songs and practicing guitars and stuff. I mean, this is a really good opportunity to grow and expand your catalog and your abilities. So I've been really hunkering down on the lead guitar, which is something I've always had a passion for. And other than that, just spending a lot of time with family, which I wouldn't otherwise get. And I'm super lucky to have.
For sure. And circling back to releasing the album, when it comes to releasing music, I know that you said the process is long. For you, is there the sense of relief, like it's finally out? So for the album, how's that feeling? I guess the release, how's that feeling?
It's almost like imagine just carrying like a heavy bag and you're just waiting to put it down, and that's kind of what it feels like. It feels like it's like I got it here, delivered it, and that's all off my chest now. And so it's going to be exciting because you put in a lot of work, and this is kind of, it's always like a couple years behind of what you're capable of. So it's like I'd say this is how great like 3/4 of how great I can be, and it's kind of cool to put that out and to keep growing. But it feels great. It's a huge relief to get all these songs that I've worked on.
For sure. And especially with the accomplishments you have with your first single, YouTube on the Rise, and the first Canadian, that kind of idea. How special is that? These like especially early on, like how has that been for you?
That was always a shock to me. I mean, I was super happy to get like just a couple hundred views on the video, and then just kind of went nuts. And but all that stuff, all those little feats have been so rewarding and felt incredible. I'll always be grateful for them.
And usually when I get to like near the tail end of interviews, especially with all the interviews I've done so far, it's the usually it's like, how is the rest of the year going for you, shows and all these things. But with COVID, I've been talking about with artists, just like a general question. So I guess for you, what's something, I guess, throughout this journey as an artist, what's things that you've learned not only about like the craft, but about like learning about yourself in this journey so far?
I mean, like, you gotta check your ego at the door is the biggest thing I've learned. I've never been too proud of myself or anything like that, but you can tell it just it becomes a competition, and the passion for it kind of escapes you. So it's like, as long as you put your head down to the grindstone and just keep working on your passion and not worried about the awards, and it's always worked out great for me. But I remember, I think my first year, nothing was really happening, and I really beat myself up over it. And then after that, I just focused on the fact that I love music and I love playing, and that helped me through it. And that's when, the gifts and rewards and whatever started like coming in, and I was always really grateful for that.
For sure. And I guess for every artist, I guess they would only know it. Do you have a one moment where you realized that this really was going to be a career? Like either when you released your single, or the way your family responded to certain things. What moment for you, I guess, if there is a moment, where you finally kind of realized, I am an artist, this is a career?
I feel, I mean, like, as a job and a career and stuff, I feel like the last summer was kind of like, I treated it more like a job as opposed to, having fun and a big party, right? So, I showed up and I went to work and treated it like a 40-hour-a-week job. And then the following year, September, is when I got the Rising Star Award. And in that very moment, I felt like all the stars were aligned. It was such an overwhelming moment where it was just like, I did it, and this is my calling, and this is, the proof for it. So it was definitely, that whole CCMA weekend was exhilarating, and put a fire underneath my feet to, pursue it and work harder.
For sure. But man, again, thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to me. Your voice, man, I don't know I know maybe you didn't realize it at first, but I know people around you must have. Your voice is like really amazing, man. Like when I first heard your music, I'm like, that's insane. Like, that's incredible. So thank you so much for taking the time out and being on Studio One. Stay safe, and again, man, thanks so much for taking the time.
Well, thanks so much for having me, dude. I really appreciate it.
For sure. Thank you so much.
Take care, man.